Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Digital Resilience Series with Fellsway Group. I'm Patrick Sheehan, one of the co-founders and CEO. I'm very excited today to have Vincent Zinssner, VP of Digital Transformation from SNHU on the series today. Vincent, good morning. How are we doing?
Great. Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you so much.
Delighted to have you, bud. I'm really excited. I know we talked a little bit about your background, and I think the audience and people that will be consuming this will be interested in hearing your perspective. So before we begin, would you mind just giving a brief background on yourself, previous, and then your role currently, and we'll facilitate the conversation from there.
Sure. Awesome. So I started actually back in France, joined the Boston Consulting Group in 2001, and spent 18 years there on the client side and then on the IT function. I moved to the US in 2006 and stay at BCG another few years. I actually decided to leave late 2018 and join Southern New Hampshire University. I had some great people there that I just trusted and wanted to work with. So I joined SNHU in October 2018. I started first as the security director, cybersecurity, for about 18 months. And recently I moved into a new role in the business under the COO as AVP Digital Strategy. So I've been in that role for the last few months.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks for the background. So a couple of things I really want to dig into. If I take a look at the majority of the security leaders out there, they're all trying to be more business enablement, business aligned, or even be from the business reporting structure. You know, the old adage of where should the CISO report, it depends on who you ask, right? And I'd love to understand how you were able to make that transition within the organization. So within that first 18 months, you obviously were coming into a digital company, right? SNHU, I think, is well positioned for how things will be moving in the higher education space moving forward, and the trends were there even pre-COVID. But at the same time, is the more digital you become, the more inherent cyber and security risk there is. It's just surface area. So you've seen a great trajectory of SNHU's success and how their mission has been accomplished to help people continue their educations, and will do even more so in the future. But can you talk to me a little bit about the journey of yourselves in security and what you think is important for security leaders to think about?
Sure. So I think when I started in security, I mean, they had a very small team, like very small. And I mean, very well intended, really trying to work very hard on, trying to make, the right decision and being as secure as we could. Now, what we saw very quickly as we were working together was that we actually didn't know what was the acceptable level of risk. What are the things that we actually really need to focus on, and what are the things that, maybe it's okay. And the reason I believe is because we need to work a lot closer with the business to figure out, okay, usually the demand to take risks is actually coming from there, not necessarily from IT. And the question that comes up is not about, whether we should let them do it or not. It comes about the discussion whether they understand the risk they're taking. And that's usually where the gap is that they don't know what risk they're taking. So nobody want to change their password. Nobody want MFA. Nobody want anything that makes their life complicated because, right, humans are lazy. So you don't want to have 10 locks on your door, every time you come in and out. So, but you understand that if you have no locks at all, anybody can come in and steal your stuff. So I think that's the level of discussion that we engage with the business. And that means the business doesn't mean one or two individual, but, every function at SNHU, from the register to, HR to legal, like how do we partner together to figure out this is the right level of security? And then it actually becomes extremely easy to set up the right control and communicate what these controls are in place. So this is the journey we've been on in security, is clearly discuss what we think is acceptable and then the most important on how do we set up the priorities so that we don't go after, the fancy security control that costs millions, while, some of the basic stuff is not necessarily in place yet.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack there. And I think if I can reverse what you just articulated, I'm going to dig into something there. It's about engaging the business to understand what they're doing on a day-to-day basis and educating them on the risks associated with the threats that are out there based upon your experience. So I love to say we're enabling risk-informed decisions. They didn't understand the risks. It's ultimately their decision to accept and make the decision whether or not they move forward. But it's our jobs to give them the risks. So I love that. One of the things that constantly comes up in our conversations with security leaders is, oh, it's so hard to get organizational risk tolerance. Maybe it is. But I'd be curious of how did you approach it? Did you start from the top down? Or did you do a groundswell based upon existing business units that already had in-flight projects? I'd be curious of how you went about it.
All over, actually. We did top down. Like we actually came, I went on a road tour to, explain what the security strategy is and how are we going to actually define the acceptable level of risk. Mm-hmm. But to do this, we also had to, review all the activities and all the things that were going on in security and in IT to figure out like, the network segmentation, the DLP, these are the things that you hear over and over, which are important. But, sometimes you have like some basic stuff like, password management that are not even in place. So how do you prioritize that work against, the more fancy stuff? Now, to your point, so the inventory, like the trying to understand everything that is going on, plus communicating what our strategy is, like how are we going to actually define the level of risk, and the level of risk actually start at your WISP, your Return Information Security Program. Like how are you going to run security? How are you going to define your policies? And I think the thing that I'm the most proud of is that we actually built the WISP. We built all the policies from scratch. And we actually agreed on a data classification policy, which is, it's actually not easy. Like let's do this. But I've tried in the past and we could not even, pull it out. There, we define the classification policy and define the classification standard that says exactly what control you need for what data. So actually, once you have this and you're running any new initiative, it's very easy because these are the security requirements. You just have to build that in and you're done. And that's, I think, the big win. So, but again, the communication was, of course, top down. Oliver, I mean, our role was to spread the word that security is not the enemy. Okay, security is there to make you safe. It's like the police, it's not there for just repression. It's also for prevention. And that's what we've tried to accomplish, but it requires a lot of communication. Like, I think it's a piece that we might fall short sometimes, like we don't explain enough that we're not the no guys. We are there to, actually make your life easier and avoid issues that you may have.
Yeah, love it. I agree. We're humans, right?
Yes.
It's about relating and
Yes.
saying, hey, I understand that you have pressure to do this job. These are the things that need to work. I'm not here to layer anything on top of you. I'm here to I'm here to make sure I'm securely enabling business growth. And that's where the future vision of security in my mind is that it's not a department. It's ingrained in the culture of the organization, right? And I think that's an aggressive utopian view that we'll get to. But I want to go back to one thing real quick before we kind of transition to the digital transformation stuff, which I'm really keen to discuss. Policies. Yes. I can't tell you how many people don't take it seriously. They download them for the internet. They skew them. And I think that is, to your point, I haven't heard anybody actually say this, is in our mind, that is what you determine is acceptable behavior. This is what we expect.
Exactly.
And if there's any questions, let's talk to HR, let's talk to legal, let's talk to finance. Let's make sure that the people that are signing off on these policies on an annual basis, or when they come in, or however, periodically we review them. But they're critically important to let you know what's acceptable behavior here, just like anything else.
Exactly.
Right? Whether it's HR, whether it's acceptable use, whether it's WISPs. And that's where I think it's a collaboration with the business to start there. And I love that, because people go, well, we don't have an enterprise risk department. We don't have a risk culture here. I don't know where to start. Start there. Let's review the policies. Let's agree what's acceptable behavior here. And then we can start move down the path of current state of maturity to desired future state of maturity, and what's acceptable in regards to how we expect you to behave over the next year. And then as the business changes, to your point, which is dynamic, we'll get to next, maybe you need to evaluate or refine or address the policy to be purpose-built for the business enablement and the objectives that we've defined. I love it.
Yes.
Simple.
Yeah, and it took
not
some
easy to do.
time
And
a lot of energy to actually get these policies, but like we created, like a lot of people have, an information security committee. I think the thing we do there is that when we meet, we go through policies, and then we have a voting process where everybody needs to approve it. And that includes student experience, HR, legal, register, IT, like all the function. We have 11 members, and they all need to approve it for it to pass. If they don't support it, that means something's wrong, and we go back to the drawing board, because everybody needs to support it, because otherwise people are going to fight it.
Yep.
And that's help us make sure that we're not going too far, and do something that is acceptable for students.
Yeah, totally agree. So one question, was that information risk council in place before you took the role?
No, they didn't have this. And again, the team was
not many people
well intended.
Yeah, I'm just curious of the reason why I'm asking that, not to make anybody within your organization feel slighted. I think it's critically important, and it sounds to be successful if you've got 11 members and it's a unanimous decision. Was there a precursor to the committee that maybe it was an engagement, maybe it was projects? Like, how did you get their commitment at the stage that you're at? Like, that's an important piece that people take from the anecdotal wins that we're doing. I think are really good to formalizing it to be part of the operating cadence.
Yeah.
How'd you do it?
So it was a lot of communication with the leadership, and the goal from the top SNHU leadership was I asked to give me somebody in their team that would be their representative.
Yeah.
So that, which means that I explain what the strategy is, and the council evolved. We had 7 or 8 at the beginning, and then, we were missing a few areas, so we added, and so we actually asked the top leadership to tell us who in their team could be the person that we run all the policies by. And we have an entire process that has been built with our compliance and risk manager, where the policy doesn't show up on their desk like magically. Like, we actually work with a bunch of people before, and we run it by legal, we run it by HR, we review the policy a lot until it feels acceptable. And as soon as we submit it to the ISC, actually, it just goes by, because everybody already approved it before almost. But it's a lot of communication, and it's creating that network, trust, and partnership with people that, actually know better what the acceptable level of risk is. Like, I don't know, as a security guy, you want to build the most secure place in the world.
Yeah.
That's not what they want. So if you don't have that balance, you'll never find the right, happy medium.
I totally love it. And if I got my math straight, you were there in that role in 18 months. You created the council, you did all those working committees and policies. You were able to drive culture change. I'm not saying that they were debunking it or they were not accepting it, but they didn't have it. And time again, I hear people, and I don't mean to say that they're excuses, but they really are, to say, well, I don't get the executive level commitment. I'm not getting what I need. That's a challenge. I'm not saying that it's not. But you're an indicative case of saying, in 18 months with a great working staff and people that were committed to it, we were able to do these things, and now it's running. So I love it. I think that's critically important. So as we transform out to your new role, which I'm really excited about. So you're the VP of Digital Transformation. Are you part of that? Are you part of that committee moving forward, or have they bumped you out? What's the latest?
No, you mean the ISC committee?
Yeah,
yes.
now that you're part of the ISC and the cross-function, you still get your hand in it, or have they moved on to different things?
No, and I actually excuse myself because I need to leave that spot to the new security director.
Got it.
So I'm still working, and actually they're gonna be part of the digital transformation as we make progress, but the goal was that, he would become the chair. There's no point for me. But we still have all the same representation. So I don't need to be part of that committee, the new security. The one thing I want to do is that I want to actually thank BCG for a lot of things, because, they taught me how to present, create strategies. These are the thing that people kind of liked, is that you can explain the overall strategy and go down, to the project level.
Yeah.
But that's something I learned at BCG. Like, how do you build an umbrella around something you want to do, and how you communicate that? And that's what BCG does the best. So
the best, and not only that, is execute, right? Like, if you didn't take those actions and you had these obstacles in your way, nothing would happen. Like I could probably be in better health, right, in shape. I got young kids and all that jazz. It's not going to fix itself. If I don't go out and do the running and I don't put the time in, then it's not going to just magically happen. Exactly. So yeah, this is hard, but at the same time, it's just like fitness. After you get through that initial hump, it just becomes an operating rhythm where you get up and go and you don't feel. And that's where I think, taking it from, the BCGs and the managing consultants out there, they understand how to create a strategy and drive it through execution, which is, tribute to your success of being there. So now you're in this digital transformation. I think that's an exciting role. I think a lot of people in organizations out there, whether it was elective or not, are being forced into modernizing digital transformation, whatever you want to call it. I know it gets thrown around frivolously. Talk to me a little bit about your role, and maybe taking the lessons learned in the applications of what you just did for business alignment and risk-informed decisions, how you're using that as leverage for maybe driving that objective of the transformation accordingly.
Sure. And so I think to get started, I think it's important to understand where you are in that digital journey. And I was at the Gartner conference last fall, and a guy took an example that just helped me a lot. And he was taking the music industry example. And when you used to buy your music in vinyl, and then the cassette for your playlist, and then the CD, and then you had iTunes. And now, so you used to have to go to the store and buy the whole thing, even if you only want one song. Now with Spotify, you just put one song and it does everything else, right. And you get everything in your phone, millions of songs. And if I look at where we are in that digital journey, to me, we're in the CD-ROM business. Because, what we've done is that we put all our analog processes and we put that in the cloud. So we are using a digital media, the cloud, but our processes are still analog. So we still have Thursday deadlines. We still have Sunday deadlines. It still takes 3 to 8 weeks to onboard a student. Like think about, if you had to wait, once you place your order, that you had to wait 3 to 8 weeks to know if it's even processed.
Yeah.
So doing that and moving to the cloud is high value, because it's then you get scale, then you don't have to worry about your data center, and it's much
resilient
easier.
Because it's being backed up. You're right. It's not on, there's native benefits across multiple domains. Yep.
So all of this, that's what we've done. So we're in the CD business.
Okay, excellent.
Now, the question is, okay, so how do you move into the Spotify business?
Right.
Because that's what the Netflix do. That's what Amazon does. That's what Uber did. And how do you get there? And actually, when we started that journey last year, to figure out, okay, what would be the IT organization? How do we do more digital? It started as an IT initiative. And as we worked, again, with Gartner, actually, we figured out very quickly that it's not an IT issue, because, you know, you can move all your technology in the cloud. That makes you in the CD business. It doesn't make you digital.
Yeah.
So what we work with the leadership is say, okay, so how do we actually start that transformation? And the transformation is not just about the IT piece. You know, everybody knows about people, process, and technology. So if you only focus on the technology, you're leaving two big pieces behind. And that's what we're trying to focus on now. And it's okay, so how do we reinvent our processes? You know, and, you know, we have a lot of compliance, we have regulation, we get Title IV, you get financial aid, you know, there's a lot of regulation.
Yeah.
But when I think about all this regulation, I also think about what Uber did to the cab industry. I mean, the cab industry, they had regulation too.
Sure.
All of that's gone.
Gone. They leapfrogged the problem, right? And like, so that's an interesting part. So if you're at that CD-ROM business, I get it. You've just gone from analog to digital, right? But the processes are the same.
Exactly.
So one thing that we constantly hear is, and it's like triaging of the house. At what point do you just knock it down and rebuild it and leapfrog the problem? Where are you guys? Like, I see you as SNHU probably as the most forward-leading digital higher education institution and university out there. Because that's the nature of your business for the most part, versus the brick and mortar universities that are struggling, or at least doing tremendous things to get to where they need to get to go from analog to digital. But at the same time, is there an inflection point? And if you got there, I know you're new to the role, that the CD-ROM to Spotify is just not going to be feasible. So we've got a leapfrog problem and focus more on enrollment and customer experience that is more of a new build versus the triaging of the old. What makes sense for you guys, do you think?
I think we're right there, is that we don't know yet, because I mean, the last piece of the puzzle, so we move our CRM, we move our learning management. The last piece that is still the old way is our student information system. And that's the piece where, again, trying to move in the CD business and moving to the cloud. I think the question is that we don't have the answer to is exactly that, is that can this help us get into the Spotify business, or do we have to redesign? And to be honest, we are barely starting the discussion, because there are already pieces in our processes that we don't have to touch the technology too much, that we could change. And actually changing the processes might be a lot easier than changing the technology.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's, I think, where we're starting to think about, like, what matters to me the most is that, like, now we're really focusing on the processes. Like, we understood that, yes, moving to the cloud is gonna make you this much more efficient.
Yep.
And cost you this much more. And I think now we get it, is that it's if we really want to save time and be more efficient, we have to go after processes.
Yeah, love it. I totally agree. And so processes are within your control, right? Because they're your internal processes, you can change that. You mentioned regulation a little bit. And I think for many organizations, listen, the regulators are always behind. They're laggards. They're catching up, right? That's how this works. I mean, yeah, they drive change, but sometimes it's probably restrictive because of their risk profile, and they're probably, you know, take so long to ratify. But processes you can change. So if you have the vision of what digital transformation looks like at SNHU, you can control the internal things, the people in the process, and the technology to support those aforementioned goals. Does regulate, what are the barriers? I mean, you got a great culture, you got great leaders, sounds like. Is regulation the only detractor, or what are the other obstacles that you're trying to ultimately address to make sure that you can get to that desired future state?
I think the piece that is the most complicated is financial aid.
Financial aid. Okay.
This is the piece that it's regulation, compliance, it's doable. The complexity of financial aid and the grant and the loan and this is the piece that is very challenging, and that's where the student information system is so key because it's complicated. So if you want to address that piece, you got to reinvent the way people buy education, and that's not a small challenge.
Yeah, and not necessarily within your control. So very similar, going back to the way you make risk-informed decisions and what you can control, like what risks are acceptable, what risks can we control and mitigate, and then which ones do we have to at least acknowledge, maybe defer, and how do we balance that accordingly? Yeah, exactly. I love it, and I think I'm rooting for you guys. Like the education system for me was ripe for some change. Right, because of the way that we're consuming information, the way that our lifestyle works, the fact that people are coming out in debt, right, for an experience and liberal arts degrees. And I won't get into my political rant here because it's not that forum. But the reality is, it was worth reviewing. And I see you guys as the disruption for the positive change, and I'm really, really rooting for you. So before we wrap, we talked a little bit about security. If I could say it, is the security's goals, as you've proven, is to be a business enabler, to make risk-informed decisions, to do hard work, to engage and educate the business, to drive that culture change. So congratulations on that. And then, man, I'm really stoked for you in this new role. I mean, this is, you guys have a tremendous opportunity to be that bellwether of what organizations need to do, given all the disruptive factors and risks that are out there in COVID and pandemics, for change for the better. So before we leave, any final thoughts for the organization that you want to share, or takeaways for the audience that may be consuming this, that are sitting there saying, wow, that's great, but that's so university specific. Maybe there's some just, anecdotal takeaways that you'd like to share before we wrap, please.
Well, I think first I want to, I'm extremely proud of being part of SNHU. I mean, the quality of the people, the leadership, they are so committed. It's embarrassing. So to me, it's almost like we have no excuse but to be successful, because the leadership is committed and they know what the mission is, and they do everything they can. They work crazy hours just to, make the student life as good as they can, help people transform their life. I think that's what gets me excited. It's almost, you want to work for free over there. It's so motivating. I think, again, to me, the last piece that I think helped us, it's whether it's education or not, is how do we partner with the people? How do we work together, collaborate? This is the magic. It's not a few slides. It's how do we get motivated together, and SNHU is such a great place to work that you just want to help as much as you can. So and Paul LeBlanc is amazing. Like, all the leadership is just great people. They'll do anything they can to help you. So
what more can you ask for?
Fail if we fail.
Yeah, what more can you ask for? Well,
Exactly.
Listen, Vincent, I really appreciate the time. Congratulations on your success. We'll be rooting for you for to digitally transform to the Spotify of education and this new consumption model. So thanks again for being a part of the Digital Resilience series.
Thank you so much. Thanks all the time.
All right.